Now, world leaders gathered in China have signed an agreement to strengthen security and economic ties. Russia's Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi were among those to join China's Xi Jinping for the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation summit. The SCO covers 40% of the world's population. China is eager for it to take a larger role on the global stage in a possible challenge to US dominance.
Leaders at the summit pledged to uphold common good for the world. That was just one of many statements from the declaration signed by the presidents and prime ministers at the 25th Shanghai Cooperation Organisation. It was an opportunity for China's President Xi to cast himself as a reliable global ally, offering financial support, encouraging partnerships in lunar exploration, and committing to cooperation over AI development. An attractive prospect for countries who feel ostracized by an increasingly isolationist United States. India and China appear to bury long-standing grievances, declaring themselves partners, not rivals.
Being friendly neighbors and mutually supportive partners, and realizing the dragon elephant dancing together should be the right choice for both sides.
Another key bilateral meeting was between Prime Minister Modi and Vladimir Putin. The Russian president once again revisiting his narrative of the reasons he decided to invade Ukraine.
Let me remind you in this regard that this crisis arose not as a result of Russia's attack on Ukraine, but as a result of the coup d'etat in Ukraine, which was supported and provoked by the West.
President Putin is among a coterie of world leaders who are heading to Beijing for a military parade on Wednesday. Officially, the ceremony will mark the end of World War II in Asia, but is also being viewed as a show of strength and a challenge to US military dominance.
Let's examine this with Clifford Coonan, who's DW's China analyst. Welcome, Cliff. Why is President Xi placing so much emphasis on this meeting of the SCO?
Well, Phil, I think this is Xi Jinping's opportunity to reshape the global world order. That's very much how China sees it. This organisation, the SCO, no one paid that much attention to it for so long. It was just a sort of a loose grouping of 5 regional states, and now suddenly it's taken on this new importance because of the developments in the world largely since Donald Trump became president of the United States again. It's his opportunity to sort of reshape things in his vision, to gather together all these different countries who the main thing they seem to have in common, as far as I can tell, is their opposition to the United States. A lot of these countries have a lot of issues with each other. Some are real rivals. China and India are real rivals, even though Xi Jinping was talking about the dragon dancing with the elephant and this kind of thing. But ultimately, they have very little in common, you know. So I think this is very much his opportunity to strike.
And how does it differ from other alliances like the BRICS alliance, especially when you see China, India and Russia important members of that as well?
Well, I think in terms of substance, they're actually quite similar because there isn't really any substance there beyond this sort of public display. It's about creating a narrative. It's about saying that we stand firm. But when you actually look beneath them, it's very hard to find, you know, they're not doing any economic deals. Right. They're mostly trade rivals, actually, particularly China and India. All that really unites them is the American thing. So in many ways, the BRICS is kind of, this is like another part of that idea of gathering these kind of countries together.
All right. Tell us then more about President Xi's vision for a multipolar world. Explain what he means by that and how that differs from what we have now.
Yeah, well, let's listen to what he had to say at the conference as well about this.
The current international situation is intertwined with turmoil, and member states are confronted with more arduous tasks related to security and development. Uphold fairness and justice, promote the correct view of World War II history, and oppose Cold War mentality, camp confrontation, and bullying behavior.
I think this is very interesting. If we pick out a few of those phrases there, he talks about Cold War mentality, bullying behaviour. These are all very clearly aimed at the United States, with which China is currently having this bitter trade war. So there's a lot of, these are very much part of his domestic agenda, is to show strength in the face of the United States, hegemony, as they call it in China. The other thing is this narrative that he's creating for the domestic market in China about the Second World War. In the Second World War, the Chinese Communist Party played a marginal role in this. Mostly it was fought by the nationalist Kuomintang, who then went to Taiwan and established the self-ruled island there. But he's now very keen to create this narrative of China of the Communist Party being part of this China's role in the Second World War. It's a big deal for him. This also fits in with the narrative with Vladimir Putin, who's head of Russia. They've got this big parade coming up in a couple of days where loads of leaders are coming, including Kim Jong-un, who's coming down from North Korea. And it's going to be another display of this unity among sort of non-aligned anti-American states.
Right. Let's talk, while we talk about display, let's talk about this vision of the elephant dancing with the dragon, China and India becoming closer. Is there substance to that, or is that just for display?
I think the display is key. However, India has been humiliated by the trade tariffs because they went into negotiations with the US and they actually came out with higher tariffs than they went in. The treatment of India, as far as Indians are concerned, has been appalling. So this is an opportunity for Xi to cement closer relations. Even though these two countries have massive border disputes, they disagree particularly on trade issues. India is very worried about a flood of Chinese goods coming in. There's no way China is going to take Indian goods in exchange. So they don't really have that much in common. What they do have in common is the anti-American line.
Okay, so we have, Vladimir Putin, one of his few opportunities to strut his stuff on the world stage, having been isolated by the West, very much at the centre of things there alongside China and India. What does that tell us about how they regard Russia's war in Ukraine?
Well, I think any doubts we had that China was giving at best, at worst, tacit agreement with Russia over its war in Ukraine. I think nobody thinks that anymore. Everyone knows that China's fairly firmly behind Russia in this. And it gives him authority. It gives Putin, by this sort of public display again, it gives legitimacy to what's happening. He's able to make these comments about how it wasn't our fault, it was the West's fault, because he's going to get no pushback there. It's also a great opportunity for Putin to get international profile because he can't really go to many countries at this point. So it just shows how this alliance, if it does have any substance, it's in things like giving credence to things like Putin's war in Ukraine. OK, so we have this Shanghai Cooperation Organisation. Some Western analysts have labelled it as an axis of upheaval, which, fine, sounds good, but what does it mean? And do you think it's true? I mean, I think it is. I think the optics are very much of an axis of upheaval, but in terms of the actual substance of what's there, I still don't think there's that much there. And I can't really see how a lot of these countries can really combine beyond being in opposition to the US. But it does show that in the current state of things, I mean, also there's very little substantive coming out of the US either. So these are not great days for international relations in terms of producing landmark agreements. It all seems to be about people establishing blocs, establishing us against them, right, and bringing chaos.
Thanks for that, Cliff, DW China analyst Clifford Coonan.